What is up, everyone? The 2024-2025 NBA season has tipped off, and I am so excited for the start of this new season. Look, I want to apologize to those that have been watching my content a little bit more on a regular basis for my inconsistency the past few weeks, the past month, if you will, because at the end of the day, I want to be more consistent. I want to do more with this channel. It's just life's been life, and lately, and me getting in the way, right? I was at a wedding, a family wedding out of the country, and now I'm back and establishing a little bit more of a routine. So I'm hoping, especially with the start of the NBA season, and I haven't forgotten about the NFL as well, but I'm hoping to establish more of a routine, post regularly, and kind of be a little bit more consistent going forward, and I hope to do that. So I apologize once again, but without further ado, I wanted to go into my picks for this year. I wanted to let you guys know how I felt the season was going to unfold, who I have coming out of the East, who I have coming out of the West, ultimately who I have winning it all, in addition to the fact of, the regular season awards, or the regular season awards to me that make the most amount of sense, if you will. So without further ado, let's jump in. So over the summer, right, as teams made their moves in the off season, whether it was drafting, whether it was trades, whether it was signings, right, I kept a tier list, if you will, of how I think the hierarchy in each conference had shaped or shifted through the off-season acquisitions that were made, or off-season moves that were made by each individual team. So, here are kind of the tiers that I had coming into this season, right? Starting with the Western Conference. When I look at the Western Conference, right, there's a top four teams, right? To me, any one of the four of these teams I could see in the NBA Finals. Starting with the Dallas Mavericks. Like, when you look at the Dallas Mavericks, look, they're the defending Western Conference champions. They're the team that were in the NBA Finals a season ago, and to me, they made improvements by getting guys like Klay Thompson and Quentin Grimes, along with Najee Marshall, guys that can add to that perimeter depth and also shoot the ball maybe a little bit better than the players they had last year. So when you look at Dallas, I think they definitely still are one of the top dogs in the West. Minnesota, Anthony Edwards. Look, I think they took a step back, right? I'm not sure how I quite feel about the Julius Randle acquisition. Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, who were traded for Karl Anthony Towns. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that acquisition to this point, but we'll see. What remains to be seen, but I still think they're a top dog in the West. I don't know where they rank within those top dogs, but I definitely think they're still there. Then there's the Oklahoma City Thunder, who without a doubt got better this offseason. They improved that perimeter defense, and along with getting a guy like Hartenstein, we improved that perimeter defense with Caruso, in addition to improving that rebounding with a guy like Hartenstein. I definitely like what they have out there. And then Denver, the best player in the league, the best player in the Western Conference, having a guy like Nikola Jokic. Look, I think they've taken a little bit of a step back. I've not been shy about how I'm losing a little bit of faith in Denver and their roster. Jamal Murray, the last few times we've seen him, has not been the Jamal Murray we remember in that finals run a couple of seasons ago. So I'm definitely keeping my eye on Denver. So those are the top four teams in that first tier. If you take a look at the next tier after that, right, you got to look at trying to get into that club, trying to get into the club of those four prestigious teams, right? To me, you have the Lakers, right? Still a very good defensive team. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, still a dangerous duo. And the role players there, along with maybe the coaching change, might improve what that roster is. The Phoenix Suns, right? You've got Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, along with Bradley Beal. And I really like, one of their biggest weaknesses was having not anybody to really fill in that point guard role. They tried to make Devin Booker the guy, and you could tell he still was out of position, and it didn't really flow as well as they wanted it to. So I definitely feel like they improved that with getting a guy like Tyus Jones and Monte Morris to potentially back him up, and then making that coaching change, right? Bringing in Mike Budenholzer after firing Vogel will definitely get that offense flowing the way it needs to go, right? Then you have Memphis, right? Memphis is almost a forgotten team. You forgot that this team was one of the top teams in the West a couple of seasons ago, so I don't want to leave them out. Ja Morant is getting healthier. That team is getting healthier, and I'm very interested to see what they do this season. You have the competitive but non-threats, right? You got the Sacramentos of the world, the Clippers of the world, the Pelicans of the world, and the Rockets of the world. Look, the Pelicans, to me, the Pelicans and the Kings are the two main teams in this group that I could see actually doing something going forward, but I just don't trust the Pelicans' health. As far as Sacramento goes, I need to see them play, right? I don't think that they really fixed any weaknesses that they had coming out of last season, specifically as it pertains to getting a guy like DeMar DeRozan when one of your weaknesses was shooting the three. So I'm not sold on his acquisition, but we'll see. And then last but not least in these last two tiers, trying to find themselves, I think these are bottom tier play-in teams, could make the play-in. You got to look at Golden State. You got to look at San Antonio. I think getting Chris Paul for Wemby and along with Harrison Barnes, some solid veterans to kind of steady that rotation, steady that roster. I like what they have in San Antonio and Golden State. To me, they always have the respect because of the fact that they have Steph Curry. And then the rebuilding teams, right? Utah and Portland. I've showed you guys my tiers. I showed you guys how I think the hierarchy in the West goes. So what are the actual picks? What are the actual predictions coming out of the West? How do I think the Western Conference is going to shape up? Good question, right? Well, I think this is how it shakes out, right? I think OKC finishes as the top seed in the West. I think they're going to have the best regular season. Look, I think Dallas is the best team in the West, but when I look at who's built to last an entire regular season, I think OKC has the depth. I think OKC has one of the better players, if not one of the top 5 players in the NBA, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I like the build of their team. I think it just suits the regular season more, and it's not that they're not going to be good in the postseason as well. I'll show you kind of how I think the postseason will go based on these Western Conference ranking predictions. If you will, I got Dallas at number 2. I got Minnesota at 3, finishing 3rd in the West. Denver at 4. I think as it comes to Denver, I think when I look at those 4 teams in that group, although they have the best player, arguably the best player in that group, I don't know if it's enough. I think those other teams are talented more so on both sides of the floor than Denver is. But I wouldn't be shocked if Denver, like I said, any one of those top 4 teams in that tier, to me, I wouldn't be shocked if any of them went to the NBA Finals. So those are the top 4 seeds. I have the Lakers at 5. Now, this was so challenging to put, between them and Phoenix, because at the end of the day, I don't know if I can trust the Lakers' health, but I do believe they're the better overall team than Phoenix. They're much better defensively. They have that playoff experience. They've gone deeper in the playoffs than this iteration of Phoenix Suns ever has. So I'm definitely a little torn between these two teams, but I went with the Lakers at 5, right? And then I went with Memphis at 6. And then Phoenix at 7. Then we round out the play-in teams with the Clippers at 8. Look, Tyronn Lue always manages to get the most out of any team he coaches, no matter the talent. And obviously a lot is dependent on what James Harden can do with this team and maybe the return of Kawhi Leonard. But I've also learned in the last 3 to 4 seasons not to count on Kawhi. In LA with the Clippers, I have the Kings at 9. I have the Spurs at 10. So those are the last 4 play-in teams. And then I have the Rockets at 11, the Warriors at 12, and the Pelicans at 13. And I'm stopping here because, look, the Pelicans, I want it to be understood that I believe the West is going to be extremely competitive this year. I think it's going to be, I could see the Pelicans with the 13th seed finishing with maybe 40 plus wins. I just don't know if I can trust their health to this point, but at the same time too, like when I look at these last 6 teams in the West, like I could see any one of them with the exception of obviously the rebuilding teams like Utah at 14 and Portland at 15 making the play-in and winning 40 plus games. As far as my picks go, right, and picking who's going to win the West, right? So if you go based off the standings that I had in the Western Conference, right, I believe OKC dispatches of Sacramento. I think Sacramento will beat the Clippers in that final play-in game, and I think they're going to lock in that last 8th seed while the Suns win the play-in game and take the 7th seed against Dallas. But going forward, right, I do think Oklahoma City beats Sacramento in 6. I think Denver beat the Lakers in 6. I still trust Denver more than I trust the Lakers. Jokic and Murray, I think Murray has a better outing this postseason, this entire season. And like I said, I didn't even give this disclaimer before, but this is all dependent on if teams are healthy. I'm going to say that they're going to largely be healthy, right? That's how a lot of these predictions were factored in, right? So I think by the end of the day, I do think that, when I looked at it, I thought that Denver, to me, was the better team. I think they have more continuity. I like how they defend, and I think that they have the advantage over the Lakers. I think they beat them in 6. Minnesota and Memphis, I think this is going to be an amazing series if it happens. I think Memphis goes down in 7 to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I think Dallas beats Phoenix in 6. Moving on to how I think the second round is going to go. I think having a rematch of Minnesota and Dallas, I think that Dallas takes this rematch. I still think Dallas is more talented, especially on the perimeter and defensively, than Minnesota is. If Minnesota had Karl Anthony Towns, I might have reconsidered. I need to see how Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards and this Timberwolves team looks before I make any more judgments. But I do think Dallas ultimately takes it, and I think OKC makes it to the conference finals, beating Denver in 6, and then in the conference finals, I have Dallas beating OKC in 7. So a rematch of the Western Conference semis a season ago. I think Dallas takes it. I think Luka will be better. I think Kyrie will be better, and I think Klay Thompson has an impact, along with getting guys like Quentin Grimes, Najee Marshall, guys who can defend on the perimeter. I think all those guys are going to play a role in helping Dallas get back to the final. So that's the Western Conference. What about the East? So if we look at the tier system out East, well, look, to me, I should almost do a league tier rankings, because Boston's at the top. I don't think any team made any type of transition or transaction or trade or signing or anything of that nature to demonstrate to me, at least in the offseason before the NBA season. Obviously, the NBA season tipped off a couple days ago, but up until that point, no team had done anything in my eyes to upstage what the Celtics are. The Celtics are a deep defensive three-point shooting assassin team. Right? They've got guys that are unselfish. They've got guys that are veterans. They've got guys that can shoot the three. They've got guys who can defend. They've got guys who can buy in. And Mazzulla, look, I wasn't high on him. I'll be completely honest with you. I wasn't high on Mazzulla as a coach, but to me, he's done a phenomenal job. He's done a great job with that team. He has them defending, he has them bought in, and he has them shooting the three. Boston, to me, is the best team in basketball, not even just the East, but in basketball. And I didn't even mention the star power and guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to put the cherry on top. So like I said, the best team in basketball for sure, not just the East. The next tier is, can we scare Boston? The ultimate goal of any team in the East is at least competing with Boston and putting themselves in a position to maybe upset Boston. And I think when you look at the teams in the East, these three have the most capable teams in kind of making Boston sweat or maybe even upsetting them, right? Starting with the Knicks. When I look at the Knicks, I see a team that plays hard, well coached, especially on the defensive side of the ball with Tom Thibodeau, right? And they're just a tough and gritty team, right? You got a guy like Josh Hart who can really do a good job of getting rebounds, in addition to Jalen Brunson, who has become a superstar in his own right, in addition to getting a guy like Karl Anthony Towns who can help them, stretch the perimeter. Now, not to say that Julius Randle wasn't doing a good job of stretching the perimeter, but I like Cat more as a shooter, and I like his ability on the defensive end more than Randle as well. Then you have the Cleveland Cavaliers. The key to the Cleveland Cavaliers, the key to this team to me, is Evan Mobley. We know what Donovan Mitchell is. We know what Darius Garland is, even though he had a down year last year. Kenny Atkinson was brought in to unlock Evan Mobley on the offensive side of the ball. Remember, Kenny Atkinson has a history in player development, right? So can he get the most out of Evan Mobley? Can he get that team playing up to pace? Can he get that offense getting up to pace and playing on a higher level than they were last year? Because to me, that was their hindrance coming out of last season, and I believe he will, right? And then we have Milwaukee. Look, Milwaukee, to me, they have the best player out of all three of these teams, but at the same time, I don't trust their ability to defend based on what I've seen last year. They need to show me that they can defend in order for me to buy into that team. Next in the next tier is Philadelphia. The Sixers, to me, I had them higher, in this contending to contend tier, but at the end of the day, I mean, Paul George is already missing time. Joel Embiid is already missing time and said he's not playing back-to-backs. I don't trust the health of this team. I'll say it. The talent is there, but every single season we say the talent is there, and they're not healthy enough to execute. I love Tyrese Maxey. I just don't trust the rest of that roster. And to me, you need stars to win in the postseason. So as far as it goes, I like Philadelphia. They're at the top of that tier. Then Miami, playoff Jimmy, Eric Spoelstra, the best coach in the league. Can never go wrong with them. The Orlando Magic, young stars, Paolo Banchero, up and coming. We'll see how they shake out, but I expect big things from them. Along with Indiana, made the conference finals last year. This is a strong Pacers team, another young team that's on the up and up, right? And then you have the trying to find themselves tier. Chicago Bulls of the world, the Charlotte Hornets of the world, the Atlanta Hawks, along with the Toronto Raptors, and then the rebuilding teams like the Detroit Pistons, the Wizards, and the Brooklyn Nets. I do think, though, by the end of the season, the Detroit Pistons might find themselves in the trying to find themselves tier, funnily enough. So those are my tiers for the East. So I have the East shaking out this way. Boston, number one. They're built for the regular season. They're built for the playoffs. They're built for the finals. They're the best team in the East. New York, I can see them taking the second seed, right? They were second seed a season ago. I can see them repeating. I can see them with Karl Anthony Towns, the addition of him. I think he's going to do really, really well in New York, right? You've got OG Anunoby on the wings, along with Mikal Bridges, along with Jalen Brunson. I like what they have with Tom Thibodeau leading them. There is going to be questions about whether or not, it's sustainable playing these guys as long as minutes as he does, but we'll see if that affects them in the postseason going forward as well. So then we've got Cleveland. I'm very high on Cleveland. I think Mobley's poised to take a leap this season. I think he's going to play very, very well because we already know what Donovan Mitchell can do. I think Kenny Atkinson's going to have that offense humming, and I think their defense is going to be just as suffocating. Milwaukee at 4, Dame Lillard, Giannis. I mean, what more can you say? Can they defend, though? That's the question. Will they be able to defend better than they did last year? Orlando at 5. I like Orlando, man. Paolo Banchero. I like what they've done getting KCP. I like that roster, how it looks. A young and up-and-coming team. Having a guy like Paolo Banchero, like I said before, a star like him in the making, I really think that team can make some noise in the East. And then you have Philly, right? Philly, like I said, I am hesitant on them because of their injury history. I don't know if Joel Embiid will be there when the postseason arrives, but I think they're good enough to be the 6th team in the East. Indiana at 7, and then I have Miami at 8, Chicago at 9, Toronto at 10. So those are going to be the last two play-in teams. Atlanta at 11, Charlotte at 12, Detroit at 13, Washington at 14. The Brooklyn Nets finishing last in the East. As far as the playoffs go, spoiler alert, I have Boston winning the East. Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think Boston takes out Indiana in 5. I think when you take a look at the play-in, how it shakes out, I think Indiana will lose to Miami, and I think Miami will end up taking that 7th seed play against New York. But I trust Miami more than I trust Indiana. Maybe that's a flaw of mine. Maybe that's a mistake, but we'll see. All right, so I have Boston beating Indiana in 5. I have Milwaukee beating Orlando in 7. I think Orlando is going to be a really tough out. They're a great defensive team. I think Paolo Banchero, similar to what he did last season, is going to make it really, really difficult on the Milwaukee Bucks. So I can see them taking the Bucks to 7. So I have Milwaukee advancing to the second round. I have Cleveland and Philly. This isn't dependent on Embiid's health and George's health and all those guys staying healthy, and I don't trust it. I think at the end of the day, when you take a look at a Philadelphia team, you have to ultimately consider health, and I think Cleveland will be healthier than Philadelphia will be, and I think that will give them the win in that series should it shake out that way. And then I have Miami over New York. Miami, I trust more than I trust New York. I trust the coaching advantage along with the fact that the players might be fresher. I think losing Hartenstein, this is the series that's going to come into effect, right? I think when you have a guy like Bam, when you have different guys who can help rebound the ball on that Miami team, along with Jimmy, along with Terry Rozier, I just like the experience element that Miami has in this series, even though I do think New York is more talented. I've just seen the story of playoff Jimmy too many times, hence why I have them going to the conference finals against the Celtics. I have them beating Cleveland in 7. Like I said, I've seen playoff Jimmy's story too many times, right? I trust that Jimmy, I don't know, maybe I'm putting too much trust in Jimmy, but at the same time, I don't think they're the most talented, but I do think they have the most experience. Do think they have that championship pedigree, or not championship pedigree, they have won one, but I do think they have that experience to help them put themselves in a position to potentially make the conference finals. And then obviously Boston over Milwaukee in 6, and obviously Boston over Miami in 6, to which we'll have an NBA Finals rematch of last year being being Boston and Dallas, and I think Boston takes it in 6 and goes back to back. So I've got Boston winning it all in 6. As far as the regular season awards go, look, I picked the most influential or awards that to me make the most amount of sense. I think Clutch Player of the Year is a joke. I just think the award as a whole is a joke. So I went with the normal awards, right? MVP, I got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right? I think that he's primed for an excellent season. I think he might even be the league's leading scorer in addition to winning MVP. I'm high on Shai, and I think he takes MVP. As far as Rookie of the Year goes, Zach Edey, I think he's going to be the one that has the most impact immediately. I think this is a draft that has mostly role players, not a whole lot of starters, and I think Zach Edey, especially with injuries to a guy like a Jaren Jackson Jr., in addition to the fact that I think he'll be kind of replacing Steven Adams. I know there's a rotation, there's depth at the rotation in Memphis for that center power forward position, but I do think Edey will get the most amount of run, more so than most rookies, and I think he's going to have success in that run as well. So I'm giving Zach Edey Rookie of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year, Anthony Davis, man. I think Anthony Davis, I think he's hungry this year, man. I think he's hungry this year. I think he's very bitter about Rudy Gobert winning the Defensive Player of the Year over him last year, and I think he's coming out with a vengeance on the defensive side of the floor this season. So I think the Anthony Davis will be Defensive Player of the Year. Most improved, I think it's Evan Mobley. Kenny Atkinson has a history of player development, right? He was there when Brook Lopez helped develop that three-point shot in Brooklyn. So I just think he's going to work really well for Mobley. He was brought there to help unlock Evan Mobley, and I think we're going to see those fruits bear themselves out in this season. I think Evan Mobley will win Most Improved Player of the Year, and I think Sixth Man of the Year will go to Malik Monk. I think he's primed for a very good season off the bench. But that'll do it for this edition of Inside the Lines. These are my picks. These are how I think everything's going to shake out. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Leave a like. Let me know in the comment section, like I said, who do you think is winning the title this year? Who's coming out the East? Who's coming out the West? Who's winning the MVP? Who's winning the Rookie of the Year? Just give me all your thoughts. I love having NBA discourse in the comments, and I can't wait to see what you guys say. But that'll do it for this edition of Inside the Lines. We'll see you next time. But until next time, we hope you keep it inside the lines.